20 May 1945. Cologne. In a notebook she keeps under a tin plate in the cellar, a midwife writes a sentence she cannot say aloud. I bring children into a country we helped ruin, and I do not know whether to wash their mothers or our hands first. Anna Weber is 38. She has a bicycle with wooden pedals and no rubber tires. She keeps her clean cloths in a sugar tin because there is no sugar. Her bag holds scissors, cord clamps, iodine if she can get it, and a stub of pencil for notes. She has learned to deliver in silence, to extinguish candles quickly when boots scrape on pavement outside after curfew, to press towels against window gaps to keep light from the street. Cologne is rubble. 95% of the central city is destroyed by Allied bombing. The cathedral stands like a question in a field of answers. The British took the city first week of March. Military government postcards proclaim new rules in bad German. The curfew says 9. The question of hunger says always. The mathematics of calories is simple by the end of May. Official rations in the British zone hover at 1,000 calories per day. Less for the old, less for the useless. There is a phrase, hamsterfahrt. People ride out with backpacks and barter for potatoes, beg for milk, carry coal by hand from trains that stop and then move again. And there is the black market, which is not black and not a market but a lifeline. Zigarettenwerbung. A lucky strike buys a dozen eggs. A tin of coffee buys a bicycle. In occupation reports, British officers note the cheerful ingenuity of German women in barter, and then they note discipline issued against the same women for breaking curfew. Trümmerfrauen. The rubble women who take the ruins apart brick by brick, clean the mortar with iron hammers, stack the salvaged stones in neat piles. They gather on the corners by dawn, register with the city office, fill wheelbarrows all day, carry bricks on their backs. They move cities backward through destruction toward the possibility of foundation. Anna brings births into spaces that are still demolitions. Cellars. Corridors with one wall left. A laundry room with an iron boiler against which the mother braces her feet. 6 June 1945. Today, a boy in a coal room in Ehrenfeld, she writes. The mother cried because the child cried. The father is missing. There is no bread. The child is fine. She notes pulse, dilation, a quickness to the delivery she attributes to fear. She writes in short sentences for herself. She expands them when the British doctors from the Public Health Division ask for reports. Notification of births. District 7. To be submitted every Friday. Sign here. She has practiced writing in capital letters. It looks like obedience and reminds her of nothing. The arithmetic of absence is more complex. On street corners, photocopies of missing notices flutter on the same boards that once held Nazi posters. Ernst, 22, Feld Post 457, last seen at the Dnieper, February 1944. Elizabeth, evacuated to Thuringia, last letter March. Karl Brenner, 24, Volkssturm Frankfurtstrasse, March 1945. Missing was a category long before victory. It becomes an atmosphere. In British intelligence summaries, the mood is described as subdued, exhausted, acquiescent. In German diaries, the mood is described less politely. We're dead and still moving, Anna writes on 28 July. The British arrive with rules and with indignation. There are lectures with films of Belsen. They drive German villagers to the wire and make them look. The first contact with victims for many Germans is under guard. There are new terms, displaced persons. DP camps on the edges of town and in old barracks, Feldafing, and later Ferrenwald in the American zone. Bergen-Belsen in the British zone, 30 miles north of Hanover, now a sign for a new kind of camp. Not a camp to die in, but a camp to keep living in for those not yet allowed home. The British call in UNRA, later IRO. They assign liaisons to keep DPs and Germans apart because the arithmetic of anger is unpredictable. Late June 1945, a woman from Cod comes to Anna, not to be delivered, but to be treated for a fever. She worked as an Ostarbeiterin in a munitions factory south of Cologne. The owner was arrested. The nurse is gone. No hospital for me, she says, in a German rough with vowels. I am not allowed. Anna boils her instruments twice. She notes the infection. She goes through neighbors for penicillin and finds a GI with a smile and 3 ampoules. The woman's fever breaks. She returns to a DP barracks outside Ehrenfeld and disappears from the ledger. Anna notes her name, Marianna, without a last. There are categories being built around them now. The Allied Control Council sets policy. The Americans call it denazification. The British in North Rhine-Westphalia are cautious and pragmatic. They issue Fragebogen, questionnaires with hundreds of questions. They create Spruchkammern, quasi-courts. They invent 5 categories: Hauptschuldig, major offenders; Belastet, offenders; Minderbelastet, lesser offenders; Mitläufer, followers; Entlastet, exonerated. They build an administrative machine large enough to classify a nation. September 1945. Notices are nailed to poles. Everyone must register. Everyone must tell the truth. Everyone rehearses the same truth. We followed orders. We cared for our children. We were not political. We were poor. We were busy surviving. There is another truth rehearsed in whispers. Answer carefully. Do not be proud. Do not be too humble. Do not remember the wrong parts. Anna fills out her questionnaire with a pencil that has dented too many ration cards. Occupation, Habami. Party membership? No. Organizations, Reichsbund der Deutschen Hebamen, which she joined because there was no other way to keep working. Did she attend rallies? She says no. Did she benefit? She says she was paid in less money than before. She adds to the margins. I delivered babies for Jews until I could not. It is dangerous, and it is also a shield. She carries letters from a parish priest and from a doctor who is still a doctor, Schein, First Feynman. She goes to a hearing in a school building with windows covered in brown paper. The judge wears a British tie and a German face. Entlastet, the file will later read in a Bundesarchiv folder. Exonerated. Allowed to practice. Country needs births, someone writes on her form in English. It is the most honest thing the state says to her. The mathematics of guilt is not a moral equation. It is administrative. It is the relationship between forms and needs. The city needs the men who understand the waterworks, and it needs the clerks who can find the missing files, and it needs engineers who lay out roads through rubble. The system needs itself back. In the end, most Germans are classified as Mitläufer, followers. They get back their desks. They sign new signatures with old hands. Some are imprisoned. Very few are major offenders. British occupation reports talk about necessary compromises. German oral histories later call it something else. October 1945. A train pulls into Deutsch station with open wagons. It is full of people from Silesia and East Prussia, from the Sudetenland, from Pomerania. Expellees. Vertriebene. They travel in cattle cars, sometimes in passenger cars if they are lucky. They carry bags with all that is left. A mattress roped to the roof. A pot. A straw hat for a child. They come with papers stamped in Czech, Polish, Russian. Some come stamped not at all. British and city officials meet them on the platforms. They redirect them to gymnasiums and school halls. The arithmetic of rooms begins. 1 family to every 2 rooms, sometimes 3 families to 2 rooms. The Wohnungsamt upstairs from the ration office is where the fight moves from the street to the desk. Karl Brenner is not home yet. He is a category. Vermist. Missing. He was put into a uniform in March and handed a rifle, volunteered by the street warden. He was last seen near the Hohenzollern Bridge, firing at shadows. He is a ghost in a family without shrines. His mother writes his name on a board with chalk and then wipes it off again. His father has already died, one of the empty chairs at the table. The first hunger winter arrives in 1946-47. It is cold in sentences and colder in rooms. Coal does not move. The British complain that the rail lines are destroyed. Germans complain that they do not want excuses. The Ruhr sits in their own state and does not heat them. People freeze in their coats. They sleep 5 in a bed. They burn furniture. They burn their books. The mathematics of coal is more punishing than the mathematics of calories, because coal is not a thing you can barter up from a neighbor's chicken coop. Medical reports pile up on office desks: edema, pneumonia, children with stick-like limbs. The British send additional rations for workers in essential industries. Midwives are deemed essential. Anna takes her extra calories and divides them by the women she sees. She gives away her ration twice and falls ill in January with a cough she cannot shake. She keeps working. She sees births with silent cries because there is so little strength. In these months, there is a phrase in Allied intelligence summaries: German tendency to self-pity persists. Another phrase: ignorance of atrocities widespread but eroding. Theatre groups perform moral plays. Schoolboys sit through lectures. Priests speak about guilt in homilies with sentences that trail off before they finish. The mothers ask less abstract questions. Will my milk be enough? Will my husband write? Can the baby be baptized now? In the DP camp near Bergisch Gladbach, Jewish survivors establish a hospital with UNRWA's help. They have their own midwives. They do not ask German midwives to assist. Their arithmetic is different. The British keep the camps separate, but they share roads and rivers. In markets, you can hear Yiddish on the edges of Cologne if you listen. 11 May 1947. A woman named Lotte, 20, brings a baby into the world in a hallway that used to be a kitchen. The father is a soldier who did not come home. The neighbors say he died in a camp in Russia. Another neighbor announces that to say a man died in Russia is a political statement. The room is cold with that remark for days. Anna writes, "We have learned to make everything moral because we have nothing left that works." The arithmetic of babies is ruthless and forgiving. They keep coming. Sometimes too early because the mothers are malnourished. Sometimes wrapped in American blankets with tags cut off. Sometimes half. Black with hair like a question mark. Besatzungskinder, occupation children, a bureaucratic term for a human reality. Some are adopted by families who can manage, some given away in private arrangements, some stared at on trams. The mothers use a set of strategies that echo the repertoire of the nation. They do not say the fathers' names. They say it is war. They say it is over. They say nothing. 20 June 1948. The currency reform. The Deutsche Mark is born. People line up outside banks and hand over their old money like gilt. They receive 40 DM in 2 installments. They clutch those new notes like passports. Shop windows fill with goods in a day. Some say the goods were hidden. Many were. Others say prices were freed. They were. The black market collapses in an afternoon. American cigarettes move from currency back to habit for those with the means. In the hours after the reform, people talk about their grandparents' tales of inflation in 1923. They hope the story will not be the same. They push coins through their fingers and remember that coins used to matter. On the day of reform, Karl Brenner returns. Not from Russia, from a French camp in Lorraine, released after 3 years. He is thinner than he left, but not unrecognizable. He stands in the doorway to his mother's room because there is no door left to stand behind. He says a single word and begins to cry. He is 27. He is alive. He needs work. There are two kinds of jobs in Cologne. Jobs that require proof you did not believe in the past. Jobs that require proof you know how to bend steel or paper toward the future. He tries both paths. He goes to the housing office and fills out forms for a desk job. He can write. He can add columns of numbers. He likes systems. He thinks he can be useful. He is hired to sit at a table and decide where strangers will sleep. The mathematics of rooms is his new front line. Expellee families have rights under provisional laws. Locals have rights under memory. Rooms are measured with tape, and people are measured with questions. Do you have a grandmother? Do you have a child under 3? Are you a widow? Did your husband desert? Are you a veteran? Are you a Marzi? Are you a Marzi? Are you a Nazi? He takes these weights and puts them against each other and calls the balancing a decision. He has a ledger with pages that remember every line he writes. Denied a room, he notes in pencil. Accepted to move to corner of Heinsbergstrasse where there is no water. He meets Anna when she comes to the office to advocate for a mother with a newborn and no roof that does not leak. She speaks with a voice he recognizes from the street, not loud, not soft. He assigns a room that is not a room but a wall around a bed. It is an act of mercy and of arithmetic both. He hates his job and does it with fervor because his alternatives are worse. 1948 is a year of airlifts in Berlin, not in Cologne, but the loading ramps at the British airfield near Wann are busy anyway. Planes land and unload tins of powdered milk, slabs of corned beef, bales of wool blankets with white stars on green labels. Marshall Plan shipments come in crates stamped ERP. Economic cooperation. Administration officers take photographs of Germans unloading American butter. They write reports about rail lines repaired, production targets met. A new phrase is born on paper, Wirtschaftswunder. It is not a miracle. It is policy and luck, coal and currency, the Atlantic suspicion of communism, the fear of famine, the habit of work. It is a number in a ledger that keeps multiplying. At the Ford plant in Niel, men return with their lunch pails and learn the new model. Volkswagen in Wolfsburg is a rumor that becomes a factory that becomes a symbol. The coal mines in the Ruhr are recapitalized. The British move from punishers to partners. They write different reports now, with different adjectives. They note improved morale, smiling children, passion for orchids, in an office that used to write habitual denial. Anna crosses the threshold where her profession changes shape. She still climbs stairwells with broken steps, still delivers in cellars, but the city is building clinics. A Frauenklinik on a street rebuilt straight when the old street had a curve. Stainless steel instruments arrive wrapped in oily paper. An autoclave hums. A tiled room is designated for births. There is a poster on the wall about hygiene with drawings of hands, white lines around black dirt. The nurses wear crisp smocks with sleeves that actually cover their arms. The doctor in charge trained under someone who trained under someone at the Charité, but now nods at mothers instead of ordering them. The arithmetic of serious infections changes when penicillin becomes routine, not contraband. Newborns that would have died half an hour after Anna left now survive to be measured and weighed and named in official books. The registers for births return to the city, bound in leather that cracks when opened. The war years have gaps. On either side of the gaps, names begin again. They are old names, and then they are new names. Some people use old names for new children to restore continuity. The psychology of naming becomes a topic for a generation of social workers who were babies themselves in these years. Denazification winds down by 1949. The files fatten and then close. The West German state forms. Konrad Adenauer is chancellor. He is from this part of the country, the Rhineland. He is the kind of Catholic who knows what sin is, and he builds a state that learns to forgive without saying so. There is a political mathematics at work. Communists are excluded because the new front line is east. Former Nazis are included if they are reliable and contrite enough. The British hand the keys over and keep their barracks. The Americans hand the keys over and keep their bases. The French hand the keys over and keep their misgivings. People who went to prison for a year or two return. People who never went at all open drawers in offices and find their old pens. Karl is told to sit on a Spruchkammer for 6 months in 1950 as the backlog of cases is cleared. He listens to men who describe themselves as Mitlock of cases is cleared. He listens to men who describe themselves. He listens to a woman who ran a Nazi women's organization and says she was assigned. He watches as attorneys present good conduct certificates from 1945. He watches as priests vouch for men they did not like in 1938 because the parish needs calm. He learns the language of the time. He knows how to read around the words on a page. Mindebelestet can mean anything and nothing. The mathematics of guilt is rearranged into the arithmetic of utility. In his spare time, he walks across the Herculesberg, an artificial hill of rubble on the edge of the city. He looks at the view. He imagines the city before. He imagines the city after. He does not let the two touch in his mind in the way he knows they touch in fact. In the early 1950s, school children learn that the Nazi years were a madness of a few. They learn about bombings and about hunger. They learn about the expulsion of Germans from the East as a tragedy. They do not learn much about neighbors who disappeared in 1941. They do not learn Yiddish words. They do not learn names like Sobibor. They skip pages. Public commemorations illuminate the parts of the past that are useful to the present. Tag der Heimat honors the expellees. Black-rimmed signs on the edges of mass graves are cleaned, but no one goes to read them in groups. The families that do it privately. Anna takes in new medical protocols like a person learning a new language every year and never quite forgetting her first. Complete pelvic rest for 6 weeks, says a new pamphlet, and she smiles because there is no rest in a room with 3 families. She still goes by bicycle. She still wraps newborns and ties off cords with a fast knot that is supposed to open easy. She still tells the same joke to cut pain, but she now signs forms with neat letters that feed into a data table in the Gesundheitsamt about infant mortality that is published in an Allied report in English. Infant mortality in the British zone declines from 95 per 1,000 in 1946 to 60 per 1,000 in 1950, the report says. Numbers that feel like lives when you hold them. 1952. The Lasnausgleich, a law by which those with property compensate those who lost property in the East. A check is issued to a family that lives in the corner of a room where a wardrobe used to stand. A levy is assessed on a man who owns a factory rebuilt with American machines. The mathematics of fairness is complicated, but in motion it produces something like decency. Karl processes these claims. He reads evidence from towns that are now in other countries, then stamps a reimbursement to be paid over 30 years. He does not believe in reparations as a word. He sees them as installments on survival. Contact with victims intensifies and retreats by turns. The displaced persons camps empty slowly into emigration. To Palestine, that is now Israel. To Canada. To the United States. The trains out of Germany carry people who spent years inside it unwillingly. In the British zone, the last Jewish DP camps close in the early 1950s. The last disclaimers in occupation reports, no longer a significant factor in German daily life. But in cities like Cologne, there are new Jewish congregations made of survivors who return or never left. There is a synagogue that will be built again. There is a Jewish school that opens a room with 4 pupils. There is a quiet under which these facts sit. In places where survivors stand in markets, there is a silence around them that is not quite neglect and not quite shame. People who once shouted exchange for people who now keep their voices low. Memory will change this in the next generation, but for now the arithmetic of looking away dominates. They do not want to know, one Allied report states, or they do not yet know how to know. Adenauer negotiates with Israel the Wiedergutmachung, reparations 1952. The Bundestag convulses in debate. The word is aspirational, not true. Karl reads about it in the newspaper in a room that now has a door. He wonders whether a country can ever calculate its own errors properly. He wonders how to pay on a note like that. 1953. An uprising in East Germany. Workers in East Berlin strike. The Soviet tanks roll. In Bonn, in Cologne, in the cities of the West, there is official outrage and a catching breath of relief. The front line is there, not here. The Cold War is the new arithmetic. Loyalty is counted in parties and tokens. Soldiers from the United States are allies, not occupiers, and on weekends they drive along the Rhine and drink beer in places that put up signs in English. The fathers who hated them now welcome their tips. The children look at their cars. In the clinic where Anna now spends most of her nights, there are electric lamps that stay on through a blizzard. There is an incubator. There are nurses who know how to run it. There is a doctor with a tricky hand. There are women who arrive in taxis because the taxi drivers have work again. There are forms that calculate the cost of a birth, but health insurance covers most of it. There is beer in the canteen, and there is coffee, real coffee, rail coffee, not roasted barley. And there are still cellars. At the edge of the city, in neighborhoods that have not yet been rebuilt, there are rooms that are not rooms where women still give birth because the clinic is far, or the husband wants privacy, or the mother-in-law says she delivered 5 at home and why should anyone change? Anna keeps delivering in those cellars. She holds a kerosene lamp and thinks about how fragile the line is between cleanliness and contamination, between strategies and mindsets. She washes her hands with soap that smells of citrus, the smell of 1954 in her imagination. She is a bridge between 2 kinds of world, and sometimes she recognizes that while tying a knot, the arithmetic of shame and silence shifts again around 1955, when the last of the prisoners of war return from the Soviet Union. Heimkehrer. 1 million men cross the border in groups. They are gaunt, hungry, uniformed in a different way. They look older than they are. They come home to wives who have made arrangements with rooms and meals and sometimes with men. They come home to children they do not recognize. The newspapers carry photographs of welcomes with banners across streets. The city hall organizes speeches. The private fact is not photographed. A man who has not been touched by his wife in 10 years stands in a hallway with the smell of soap and coal and does not know what to say to a child who cannot do the arithmetic of 9 months in his head. Anna sees births 9 months later and writes neutral sentences in her books. Strong cry at birth, head circ 34C-, father present. 1957. The economics deepen. The factories hire migrants from Italy, the first Gastarbeiter. They are young men who send money home and eat in groups in boarding houses with damp walls. They will later bring wives. For now, the city holds them in its stomach and forgets about them. The clinics do not yet see them much. That will come later. the streets fill with vespers and with the smell of gasoline that is not rationed anymore. School books are rewritten again. There is a unit on democratic citizenship. There is a page on the dangers of ideology. There is no roll call of neighbors in the years 1933–1945. The focus remains on the consensus of suffering, the liturgy of ruins and hunger. It is not wrong. It is not enough. In city squares, the memorials unveiled are for the victims of bombing and for the soldiers lost. A plaque for the deported Jews is a small brass rectangle on a wall, unveiled with little ceremony at a time of day when people are at work. In 1958, the clinic hires 2 new midwives, trained in the latest methods out of Bonn. They talk about active management of labor, about prophylaxis, about perineal massage and modern stitch techniques. They look at Anna as a relic of an older time. She smiles back. She still ties knots that hold. She still knows when a baby's shoulder will stick. She still knows when a woman's voice has a tremor that signals something more than pain. Anna has a file in the city archives by now. It isn't much. A denazification folder with her name and the word Entlastet. A few reports to the Gesundheitsamt, typed by someone else from her penciled notes. An occupational report by a British officer named Jones in 1946 mentions admirable work by German midwives, a line underlined by someone who might be her. Bundesarchiv records acknowledge that the birth rate in her district rose by 1953 to a number that means something to demographers. For her, it means 2 extra visits to her sister on Sundays, because women give birth every day of the week, and that is the only way to have a day. Karl keeps his notebooks too. He writes in them at night because the act of writing absorbs the energy of thoughts he doesn't know where to place. He writes down the sums he has done at work and the sums he cannot do. He notes details necessary for bureaucratic survival. File 12, 1954, relocation of the Pole family from 2 rooms to 1 room with better light. File 118, 1955, expellee claim approved after second hearing. He notes things that do not belong in files. Frau H's hands when she pleaded for a door. Man in line with a smell of cold iron. The Cold War makes his job easier and worse. Easier because there is money for rebuilding so long as the city shows that it is in the right camp. Worse because the habit of dividing people into camps is a skill he wishes to lose. City council meetings become arguments about the right to forget. A resolution to build a monument to all victims of war and tyranny passes. It is the kind of language that holds everything without holding anything. The mathematics of inclusion is political. The mathematics of specificity is corrosive in a country that wants to be whole again. Anna suffers a stroke in 1959. It is small, a warning. She recovers with a slight weakness in her left hand. She stops riding the bicycle and lets younger midwives climb the stairs in the buildings without elevators. She works in the clinic. She lifts less. She listens more. She is, by then, a figure. Mothers will later tell their children that a woman named Frau Weber, with a kind voice and hands that smelled of soap, brought them into the world. It will be true and wrong. She did not bring them, she guided them, and it was the mothers who brought them through pain. 1961. Karl sits in a room with a window that finally closes without paper stuffed in the cracks. He has disassembled the stove and reassembled it in a better way because he can do that now. He has a steady job. He is not rich, but he can afford a pair of shoes without saving for a season. He is 39. He has no children. He has thought about marriage 4 times and walked away because his ledger would not close. He keeps the notebook he has kept for years. He writes the dangerous line that summarizes his life, and in writing it he realizes that he has never said it aloud to anyone. The line is not about war. It is about what came after. It is about how a life built under one set of rules is rebuilt under another. It is about what all of them know and what most of them do not say. He writes, "We learn to live by dividing the truth into portions as small as ration bread, and that is how we have eaten since 1945. He thinks about Anna. He thinks about ashes on the wind when he was from 1945, a man who had to pretend he was not there. He thinks about the women who lifted a city piece by piece. He thinks about British officers who signed papers with names like Smith and Jenkins and saved lives without knowing whose. He thinks about the DP camp on the edge of town that closed while everyone was busy opening new shops. He thinks about the school books his nephew brings home with drawings of bombers and empty spaces where there should be context. He knows the denazification files by heart. He knows the categories like he knows every nerve in his hand. He knows that the division between Mittelwerfer and Minderbelastet is a line drawn on a form by a person who needed to go home for supper. He knows that justice must be precise, or it becomes something else. And he knows that precision in 1945 was a luxury a starving country could not afford. He knows that the mathematics of guilt came second to the arithmetic of milk. He does not absolve anyone. He does not accuse anyone in his notebook. He writes in the voice of someone who has learned to live under two states and in two economies, and to bend in the right places without breaking. He writes with a kind of love for the people who did their best for the next morning's breakfast. He writes with a kind of rage for the people who did their best to erase whole years. He goes to the clinic one Sunday to bring flowers. He finds Anna in a room with a window open. She is showing a younger midwife how to hold a baby's head with a hand like a cup. The city hums below. Traffic is a kind of promise now. In the distance, a crane lifts steel that will be an office building that will bear a name no one will pronounce correctly in German. He stands a moment and watches. He turns to go. He leaves the flowers on the chair. He walks home past a memorial with a wreath laid by a councilman who is new enough to be innocent of the past and old enough to profit from its forgetting. He stops at the Herculesberg again. He watches children climb it as if it were natural, and he does not correct them. The hill is what it is now. He knows what it is made of. He smiles anyway. He sits at a table that he sanded himself until it was smooth. He opens his notebook. He returns to the first page where the opening entry is from May 1945, when he was a person in a world that did not yet have a name. The entry is a list of things he lost. He turns to the last page. He writes a sentence that is the brother of the one he wrote at the beginning 20 years and a country later. He writes, "We have now delivered a new life, and we have buried what we could not carry. We won the peace for ourselves by promising one another not to ask too many questions, and the front line runs through my memory and my paperwork still."